I've got SpongeBob! He's over here!
With 25 years under the belt that holds up those iconic rectangular trousers, SpongeBob and friends have been on a lot of adventures through the years. But the SpongeBob franchise has changed a lot over said years. With 14 seasons, 3 theatrical movies, a lot of video games, and a bunch of other stuff, we decided it was time to point out the best and worst of the Bob. We've taken 25 of SpongeBob's most iconic media endeavors and ranked them from worst to best.
Are they laughing at us?
No, Patrick. They're laughing next to us.
In any case, we begin with the art that, unlike Squidward's masterpiece Bold and Brash, belongs in the trash. This is the F tier. Now, we obviously can't include every SpongeBob game out there, but we've taken into account the most noteworthy console releases, and that included SpongeBob Hero Pants. The only nice thing I can say about this game is that it did make the last place pick very easy. It's no secret that SpongeBob merchandise will sell like crazy, no matter what it is, so effort doesn't always have to be a factor. So when Sponge Out of Water released in theaters, who was better to adapt it to video game format than Activision? I don't know, like literally any other studio? The game is nothing but full-priced shovelware mixing ear-assaulting sound design with PS2 quality graphics, but does the gameplay make up for it? Yeah, you really don't need us to answer that. We're still going to, though. The gameplay is, imagine the most basic, bare-bones 3D platformer you can. Then lower your expectations severely. Do not expect even an ounce of variety or SpongeBobness, and you've got SpongeBob Hero Pants. The only cool thing about the game is the fact that you can play as 6 characters, which would be neat if the gameplay consisted of more than walking, jumping, and mashing the attack button. Oh, I forgot, sometimes you press buttons, too. That's that's really it. But while it's not as low effort as the previous entry, we have one more piece of SpongeBob media that belongs in the F tier just on principle. Camp Coral. For those who don't know why Camp Coral is so controversial, it was announced just a few months after the tragic passing of Steven Hillenburg in 2018. Shortly after its announcement, Paul Tibbitt took to Twitter to call out the executives who greenlit the show for their corporate greed, and while it was later revealed that Steven knew about the show, the announcement of a SpongeBob Babyfication spin-off being mere months after his passing still raises more than a few eyebrows, especially considering how many other spin-offs they rapid-fired at us. But we could get mad about the show as a concept for hours.
Way ahead of you, buddy!
What about the show itself? Simply put, it's impressively boring. If you were ever watching SpongeBob and thought that it was just too funny and well written, you're in luck. This show's entire identity is a watered-down version of a show that already takes place underwater. All of the jokes are genuinely, ahaha, it's the character doing what they do, XD! It maybe could have been carried by the cutesy voice acting and animation from the commercials, flashbacks from the third movie, but this show has all the artistic quality of Fanboy and Chum Chum, which would be fine if they hadn't baited us with the admittedly gorgeous animation of Sponge on the Run. There's hardly anything to say about the show. If it were really bad, it would at least be an interesting talking point, but it just isn't. It's the most inoffensive, flavorless spin-off SpongeBob could possibly make, and ironically, that makes it the most insulting. But now we move on from the bad stuff to the stuff that's still bad, but at least we can defend it a little bit. This is the D tier. If there's one thing pretty much every SpongeBob fan seems to agree on, it's that seasons 6 to 8 were the absolute lowest point of the main series. To say this show started to go downhill after the first movie is a take colder than SpongeBob's house when he got the suds. But while the difference in writing was pretty clear right away, most people agree that season 6 is the point where things started to actively get worse. With Hillenburg off the team for a while, the writers lost the magic of what made SpongeBob such a great show. Rather than being a show anyone could enjoy, everything about the series was simplified to basically cater solely to the more kiddie aspects of the show, the biggest crime being how dirty the characters were done. Now, you could try to defend these seasons by saying, blank was always this way, and yeah, sure, but the character traits like SpongeBob's childlike innocence, Patrick's gullibility, and Krabs' greed never, or at least rarely, took away from them being fun and likable characters. This era, though, SpongeBob turns into a crybaby and serial stalker, Patrick loses the few brain cells he had to the point where his actions almost feel malicious, and Mr. Krabs just, the man turns into a sociopath.
Ha! Crabs too? Oh, this is rich!
I get selling your boyo's soul for 62 cents only to feel remorse 30 seconds later, but then there's psychologically torturing your business rival and laughing when he tries to kill himself. Somehow sending SpongeBob to hell seems pleasant and tame in comparison. Up next we have the current newest entry on the list, Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. I really wanted this one to be good. If there was one character in the world of SpongeBob who could have had a great spin-off film, it was Sandy. She's a scientist squirrel from Texas, a master of of karate, and an all-around badass.
Yep, I still got skills.
Unfortunately, though, the movie just doesn't come anywhere near that potential. Sandy's film debut moves at lightning speed, and it feels like nothing is happening, and like there's too much happening at the same time.
Uh-oh, that's the fuzz. Hold on, everybody!
Like, Sandy is a scientist, but she also has superpowers, and her family has a circus, and she works for a Texan science group and is a spy. Seriously, can we talk about that? You expect me to believe that Sandy has been unknowingly spying on her friends for the past 25 years, gathering data for her boss and coworkers, and they never once came up in the show? Oh wait, no, they did. The episode Chimps Ahoy, she works for a bunch of chimps. These aren't chimps, though. They didn't even get the chimps to play these characters. I don't care if she's a talking squirrel. This is where I stop suspending my disbelief. But ironically, this movie's greatest hindrance is, unfortunately, SpongeBob. Sandy decides to take him along on the journey, and he really just kind of exists to make some silly comments and then laugh about said silly comments. I love SpongeBob, but come on, man, you've had 25 years of TV and 3 theatrical movies. Just let Sandy take the bull by the horns this time. Still, the movie has its good qualities too. The colors are cute, the live action segments in the third act are so stupid they somehow circle back around to being genuinely funny, and there are actually a lot of funny visual gags. The animation is decent too, but those character models are a mixed bag. Keep that Mrs. Puff away from me. Overall, while the Sandy movie isn't necessarily awful, it's definitely clear that it's more of a cash grab than anything else. I could totally see younger kids loving it, but for those of us who grew up with the show, there's not much here. Still, there's at least something. I laughed a few times, and there were some nice references to previous Sandy-centric episodes, but whether you'll love it or hate it, one thing is for sure. They just confirmed Squidward is bisexual and he swoons over Sandy's cousin. Make of that what you will, I guess. I don't know. Next we have the third movie, Sponge on the Run. Really, it more or less just feels like it's trying to hit all the story beats of a SpongeBob movie. The first act is just 20 minutes of the characters proving that they are, in fact, the characters. SpongeBob is happy, Patrick is dumb, Sandy is smart, Mr. Krabs is greedy, etc. The rest of the movie is basically trying to be the buddy comedy road trip that the first movie is, but it relies less on silly things like jokes and character development.
Wait, we're talking like smart people. This must be a dream.
And more on, like post-season 5 episodes of the show, a lot of screaming! But credit where it is due. While the whole courtroom scene is a thinly veiled advertisement, and definitely the most insulting part of the movie as a result, it's still as heartfelt as the movie gets, which is kinda sad, but at least it's got some merits, and it's always nice to see Mr. Krabs and Squidward sticking up for SpongeBob. The animation is also fantastic. Seriously, Camp Coral would have made it to this tier if it looked anywhere near this good. The movie isn't objectively bad, but it's utterly disappointing compared to SpongeBob's other adventures. Heck, this one didn't even get a cheaply made licensed game. I mean, yeah, it probably would have sucked, but it also would have probably been funny. But if cheaply made games be something you wish, Planktons Robotic Revenge is here to close out the D tier. I remember vividly the day I saw this game first. That box art, that name, no doubt about it. This was the successor to Battle for Bikini Bottom that Kid Me needed in his life. I couldn't wait to crack this baby open, and to the game's credit, it is playable. They got all the voice actors and the game functionality works, but the game really isn't anything special, all things considered. I do want to give a shout out to whomever decided to give SpongeBob characters a Ratchet and Clank type of weapons arsenal to shoot robots with. It's a fun concept, and with enough friends to play with, you might get a kick out of it. Unfortunately, the lack of any interesting or unique level designs makes it a pretty boring game for anyone above the age of 9. It's basically Hero Pants' slightly more competent older brother, which gets it a somewhat passable spot on the list. With that out of the way, we now venture into the C tier. Here's where we start to see some light in the proverbial tunnel of SpongeBob's history. First in this category is an entry I just couldn't help but mention. Before all those fancy Candy Crushes and Angry Birds and whatnot, there were Flash games. If you grew up watching SpongeBob in the 2000s to 2010s, you probably played more than a few of those Flash games of varying quality. These really are a product of their time. The compressed voice clips, the constantly reused assets, the weird inconsistencies, and oh, the memories. With such games as Karate Contest, which features the exciting mechanic of those crudely drawn SpongeBob and Sandy models beating the piss out of each other, to Reef Rumble, a Street Fighter clone where all you need to do, and all you can do if you want to win, is fire your character's own personalized Hadouken. You'd rarely get bored with the selection here. They may be a thing of the past, but there's something about them that's just endlessly charming. If that's not nostalgic enough for you, maybe SpongeBob's first game will be. Enter Legend of the Lost Spatula, the absolutely legendary title for the Game Boy Color. Okay, so it's not exactly state-of-the-art, sure, but for kicking off SpongeBob's video game career, we feel it deserves a mention regardless. I mean, just look at these beautiful character sprites. They all look just about this beautiful, and the best one has to be Plankton, and that's not even to mention his soulful dialogue. Isn't Krabby Patty all any of us want, Plankton? Wise words from a wise, single-celled organism. I guess we're sticking mostly to video games for this tier, because next up is Atlantis SquarePants. Despite also being being a TV special and one of the more divisive ones, that Atlantis SquarePants also got a couple of video game adaptations.
Whoa.
Honestly, there's a surprising amount of creativity here. It's basically a mix of addictive minigames, character-based puzzles, rock band-styled rhythm games, and even multiple first-person shooter segments, and I'm still missing a few. Then there's the DS version, which is a surprisingly decent 3D platformer with some fun mechanics. Of course, this one, like many SpongeBob games, is admittedly really bizarre in hindsight. Example? Well, excluding the actually horrifying cel-shaded cutscenes, there's Mr. Krabs' voice performance. In a lot of SpongeBob games, they failed to get Clancy Brown to reprise his role, which is coincidentally due to money most of the time, but in this game, they didn't even bother to cast a replacement who could do a semi-decent impression. Instead, he just communicates with grunts and groans like he's a wild animal. This has stuck with me since childhood as one of the most baffling decisions in game development history. I need to know that I'm not the only one who feels this way. And at the tail end of the C tier, we have seasons 9 and 10. Like seasons 6 through 8, these suffer from many of the same issues. There are also definitely a few stinkers, like the SpongeBob You're Fired special, and oh god, Squid Baby was in this one. That's, yeah, I love to remember that one exists.
Not another word about this.
But in all seriousness, we place this era a tier higher because this was the point where there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Steven Hillenburg was able to return to the series for a while and spent a few more years nurturing his most beloved work. That's gotta be a nice way to live out your remaining days. These seasons definitely weren't anywhere near the classics quality, but they were showing some signs of improvement, which earns them a decent spot on our list. Seriously, Goodbye Krabby Patty is one of the best specials in the whole series, and I'll die on that hill. Speaking of hills, it looks like we're over the hump because it's time to enter the B tier. First up, we have the adaptation of SpongeBob's 10th anniversary special, Truth or Square. Like Atlantis SquarePants before, Truth or Square is one of the more divisive special episodes of the series. But also like Atlantis SquarePants, Truth or Square has a pretty solid video game adaptation, which isn't too surprising given how it was developed by Heavy Iron Studios. They were behind the SpongeBob Movie game and Battle for Bikini Bottom, and if you know anything about SpongeBob games, you know that's a good sign. While it's not as good as its predecessors, Truth or Square is a solid game in its own right. Sure, it reuses the exact same soundtracks of the previous two games, and it's much more linear, but it more than makes up for that with one solid factor: heart. Every level is loosely based on a classic episode of the series, and it acts like a sort of dreamlike remembrance of it, with different characters, set pieces, and conflicts to shake things up while catering to lifelong fans. It's hard to not appreciate the amount of love and attention that went into this game. You can't walk 10 steps without seeing a reference to a classic episode. It's really cool. Next, we have one of the first major game releases after the movie, Creature from the Crusty Crab. From a game with dreamlike aspects to a game that actually takes place in the dreams of 3 characters, Creature from the Crusty Crab has it all. If you thought Atlantis SquarePants went crazy in terms of variety, you've hardly seen anything. This game has everything from horrifyingly detailed drag races to playable comic books to giant plankton monster movies. The imagination here is off the charts, and it's backed up by a unique blend of visual styles and a surprisingly good soundtrack. Seriously, what is it with these SpongeBob games having such good music? We'd honestly love to put this game even higher, but, well, its weakest aspect is ironically the game itself. It plays fine, but some levels just feel like they're dragging on and on. It's a jack of all trades but a master of none, so while it's a fun enough game, it's far from one of SpongeBob's best gaming endeavors. Now, without further ado, we've finally reached seasons 11 to present. In other words, the current era of SpongeBob. Let's get one thing out of the way. Current SpongeBob, love it or hate it, is fundamentally a completely different show from its first few seasons. But in its own right, it's still pretty decent. For one, the animation, while overstimulating at times, is very expressive, colorful, and, say it with me, fun! Like most of the post-movie series, it's much more geared towards just kids rather than all ages, but it makes up for this by being a more creative, fun show than it had been in years.
Patrick, I think that's enough knowledge for one day. Looks like you're full.
No longer are 90% of the episodes about either Plankton stealing the formula or SpongeBob stealing Squidward's will to live. There are a lot of creative stories here. There's Karen's Virus, which features an unlikely team-up between SpongeBob and Plankton to destroy a virus that's infected Karen, complete with multiple styles of animation. And we can't forget Cuddle E Hugs, where SpongeBob has a horror movie-esque bond with an invisible talking hamster who ends up trying to eat him. You can say a lot about the newer seasons, but you definitely can't call them dull. And if nothing else, they have a love for the classic seasons, especially when it came to that big 20th birthday special. Next up, we have another video game, SpongeBob Squigglepants. During that brief period of time when the U-Draw gaming tablet was a thing, SpongeBob decided to take a crack at the new gadget and made a pretty decent WarioWare clone from it, consisting mostly of micro games and the occasional mini games, and even broken up by some cutscenes featuring Patchy. Squigglepants is surprisingly one of SpongeBob's most well-made games. If all that isn't enough to convince you, you're sure to enjoy how much heart was poured into the different art styles used. Everything from third-grade notebook doodles to superhero comic books is is here on full display, making it one of SpongeBob's most charming video game expeditions. But if you think this video has been too focused on SpongeBob, well, first of all, why'd you click on it? Second of all, alright, let me just get behind this PNG of a riot shield before I announce that the Patrick Star Show has made it to the upper end of the B tier. I'm honestly as surprised as you guys are. Sure, the Patrick Show is often lumped in with Camp Coral as an utterly disrespectful abuse of the late Hillenburg's art, but there is one important distinction. The Patrick Show is actually somewhat decent. No, like, seriously, remember when Uncle Grandpa came out on Cartoon Network and everybody hated it, only to come back later talking about how fun that random style of humor was? That's the vibe I get from the Patrick Show. Yeah, it's obnoxious. It carries the same energy as the current era of the show, where it's mainly just a loud equals funny approach to comedy, but it's so darn devoted to its stupidity that somehow it circles back around to being endearing.
Oh, that show's a hoot. The big guy is so dumb.
Don't get me wrong, this isn't some hidden masterpiece of a show that you've been sleeping on, but it's one that you could tolerate while your little brother or sister watches it. I watched a couple different episodes for the sake of this video, and I was surprised by a few things, two in particular. One, the show has great art and animation, with different art styles, backgrounds, and color palettes depending on what's shown. The Patrick Show sells out comes to mind, using slightly duller colors to portray the Bikini Bottom of the original series, and even Mr. Krabs and Plankton, who have a really fun Tom and Jerry style banter in the episode.
Now, when I say chum, you say bucket.
And we can't forget the episode Bubble Bass Reviews, where it's literally just 11 minutes of Bubble Bass reviewing the Patrick Show nostalgia critic style. More than anything, the show is genuinely fun. It's not a masterpiece, and it's still way more kid-oriented than the classic seasons, but it's a surprisingly charming and funny series. And closing off this section, we have one last video game, a truly one-of-a-kind game, SpongeBob SquarePants Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. Right off the bat, this game earns a lot of points for being the first 3D platformer SpongeBob game. It was the first time fans were allowed to explore Bikini Bottom in full, and for the time, it was pretty accurate. To the amateur eye, this might look unfaithful to the show, but the development of the game took place around season 1 and a little bit of 2, which means that the locations are based on those earlier seasons, which, okay, some of them are still not very faithful, like, I don't know why they thought downtown Bikini Bottom would just be a series of dark alleyways, or that Goo Lagoon was covered in Cheeto dust, but then you've got gems like Jellyfish Fields, which is full of all the flowers, hoppin' clams, and waterfalls you'd see in the Fun Song. Look, I'm going fully on nostalgia here, but there's something so endlessly charming about this game being the mess that it is. Like how some areas are perfectly recreated from the show and others look nothing like them. Or how they got literally every voice actor for every character, except for the French narrator who, mind you, is voiced by Tom Kenny, meaning he just didn't do the voice this time. I don't know. It's the kind of game that'll bring back fond memories at best and be a so bad it's good game at worst. I mean, just look at these beautiful character models. Oh yeah, you guys like that jellyfishing costume, right? That song's pretty catchy, isn't it? Enjoy the next 5 hours, you're not escaping any sooner. But once you do, tag along with us to the A tier. This is where SpongeBob Media goes from good to great. We begin our second highest tier with the second and second best theatrical SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. Now, admittedly, this one is guilty of a little false advertisement. If you watched those trailers looking forward to a whole 90 minutes of SpongeBob and pals exploring dry land, you'll be a bit disappointed. But if you keep an open mind, this is a surprisingly great SpongeBob movie, even if it's only the second best. Instead of the SpongeBob and Patrick dynamic of the original movie, this one focuses on a much more unpredictable one, SpongeBob and Plankton. When Bikini Bottom descends into chaos after a pirate steals the secret formula using a magic book, SpongeBob and Plankton are the only ones with enough sanity to save the day, which means some good old-fashioned TM work.
What's TM work?
Their dynamic is genuinely funny, and the movie itself has a lot of good jokes. Plus, all the major characters are given room to shine, even if the focus is on the main frenemies. Overall, Sponge Out of Water is one of the last truly great pieces of SpongeBob media, as well as one of the last ones Hillenburg would work on before he passed. You done good, Hillenburg. From the grand return to the initial departure, next we have seasons 4 and 5 of the main series. Admittedly, right off the bat, it's pretty obvious that the writers and direction of the show as a whole have changed here. Compared to the pre-movie seasons, season 4 is a lot more slow-paced with its humor, more focused on entertaining the kids of the audience than being enjoyable for all ages.
Young man, what has caused you to act like this? I must know!
That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. I mean, SpongeBob is a kids show after all, and thankfully the first couple of seasons after the movie actually did retain most of the charm of the first 3. Seriously, you'd be surprised how many episodes considered classics came from these seasons. Where's Gary? Season 4. Fear of a Krabby Patty? Season 4. Roller Cowards? Season 5. And a lot more. This is also that nice period of the series where the animation became more smooth, but it wasn't yet too overstimulating. The show must go on with lights, camera, pants, When you hear the term party game, you probably think of one of two things: Mario Party, or its many Demon Slayer made a Mario Party clone? But SpongeBob's take on the Mario Party adjacent formula makes a simple yet brilliant decision. The game has over 30 mini-games, which admittedly isn't a lot to distract from the friendship-breaking board games. That's why it's a good thing that Lights Camera Pants doesn't have any of those board game aspects. You just play goofy mini-games with snazzy music and iconic characters and locations from the show. It's simple, it's effective, and most importantly, it's just plain fun. But the performance-themed stuff isn't done quite yet. On today's episode of Wow, this has no right to go as hard as it does, we have the SpongeBob SquarePants Musical. I don't know who decided there was even potential for a SpongeBob Broadway musical, but I want to sincerely thank them. The set design, the character costumes, the choreography, look, I don't know a lot of musical lingo. What I do know, though, is that they absolutely nailed bringing SpongeBob and his world to the stage. With some ridiculously good songs that don't always have anything to do with the plot, it captures the vibe of the show really well. Surprisingly, the music isn't the only highlight. It has some genuinely good jokes. My personal favorite being Plankton referring to SpongeBob as Rhombus Slacks. If you haven't watched the musical yet, you definitely should. It gave us Gary on his skateboard, which is already a strong start, but if there's any moment that absolutely hooked us on it, it'd have to be Patchy's sudden cameo and musical number halfway through. If you're still not convinced, you're just plain POOR. We've officially entered the elite top 5, and it's kicking off with the SpongeBob Movie video game. SpongeBob does plenty of near impossible stuff in the show, but perhaps his most unbelievable achievement to date is having not just a successful movie adaptation, but a video game adapting said adaptation, and said game being good. 20 years later, the SpongeBob Movie game is still the second most beloved SpongeBob game of all time, perfectly retelling the story of the movie with all the platforming and combat prowess of Battle for Bikini Bottom, but in a more linear, less forgiving environment. Whether you're sliding down giant volcanic rock slides, fighting whatever horrifying monsters you run into, or trying desperately to get enough goofy goober tokens for Mindy to give you the upgrade you need, this game is great both as an adaptation of the movie it's based on and as a game in its own right. It's not exactly a masterpiece, of course, there are definitely some design flaws here and there, but those are more than made up for by its faithfulness to the source material. You'll get different outfits and expressions in different levels, new moves to enhance combat, and if you get bored of the main levels, there are always those weirdly psychedelic bonus levels. Yeah, I like the SpongeBob levels, I said it. But while I'm not sure if this is controversial, the newest SpongeBob game, The Cosmic Shake, is one I consider even better. The first console game, excluding any remakes, since Hero Pants, The Cosmic Shake had a tough act to follow. By which I mean said act was so bad they had a lot of fans to regain the trust of. And while Cosmic Shake isn't exactly the hottest talking point in the gaming community, it's still a shockingly well-made game, and all that boils down to how much genuine effort went into making it. First off, this game was clearly made by fans of the show. Easter eggs, classic episode references, cameos from every main and supporting character except Mermaid Man Barkle Boy, rest in peace, honestly, and literally all of them being reprised by their respective voice roles from the show. On top of all of that, the game has a creative story that sends SpongeBob and Patrick through numerous dimensions to explore different versions of iconic Bikini Bottom locations, like a Wild West jellyfish fields or even a dystopian jelly-covered glove world. It's got some decent jokes, pretty good replay value, fun gameplay mechanics. They gave SpongeBob a homing dash. Like, that alone tempts me to place this game in S tier, but as far as SpongeBob games go, we all know there can only be one true champion. With that, we've reached the pinnacle of absorbent yellow porous greatness. This is the S tier, and I'm sure you hardly need to be told that the bronze medal of greatness goes to Battle for Bikini Bottom, a game that single-handedly challenges the claim that licensed games based on pre-existing properties suck. Battle for Bikini Bottom takes the approach of having actual fans of the series make the game, and the result is a game that acts as a true love letter to the classic SpongeBob seasons, with jokes that seem like they came straight out of classic episodes to environments that really make you feel like you're playing through episodes of the show. Even having 3 fully fleshed out playable characters, the game never gets boring. Okay, it kind of does in the kelp forest, but nothing is perfect. In addition to being a good product for SpongeBob fans, the game is also good as, well, a game. It features a nice mix of platforming, collecting, and light combat, truly the pinnacle of any great 3D platformer. One moment you're busting up robots at the Goo Lagoon Pier, the next you're trying to beat Mrs. Puff's record on Sand Mountain. It's truly a phenomenal game, especially considering that it came out at the height of SpongeBob's popularity, meaning that, frankly, it didn't need to be all that great to sell well. But it is, and I love it. And the Silver Medalist of Greatness supports that idea too. The SpongeBob SquarePants Movie. Often when a TV show gets a movie, it goes the route of just making a regular episode of the show, but longer. The SpongeBob Movie is nothing like that. Sure, it has all the sense of humor, expressive art, and animation of the show, but it takes it all to a much bigger and grander scale, having SpongeBob and Patrick go on a journey through the deepest, darkest recesses of the ocean, places we've never seen in the show, but that feel totally in place.
We're safe and sound at the bottom of this trench.
That's not to mention the movie featuring the absolute best of Plankton. From his ridiculously pissed off expressions to a surprisingly well thought out plan, this is not just Plankton, this is Peakton. The emotional crux of SpongeBob and Krabs' relationship is a perfect note to end on too, with the latter finally learning to respect his boyo for who he is, rather than waiting on him to grow up. Tack on SpongeBob and Patrick's always sweet best friend dynamic and you have an unforgettable movie that fans will remember fondly as the true finale of a pretty much perfect cartoon.
Wait, Pat! This bigger boot saved our lives.
Yay! But on that note, the gold medal of greatness goes to seasons 1 through 3 of SpongeBob. I'm not even gonna try and make a special transition into that one, it's just that obvious. I can't imagine that literally anyone went into this video expecting something else to take the top spot. And if you did, well, you might want to sharpen your wombology knowledge. Jokes aside, basically every iconic meme, joke, quote, etc. from the series came from the first few seasons.
SpongeBob, in art class. Wait! This is cooking! Come back!
The first season gives us a cozy but still goofy vibe to the series. It takes the time to introduce the world of Bikini Bottom while not shying away from the unpredictable humor. Seasons 2 and 3 ramped up the comedy aspects of the show, and it's where the characters really came into their own. And 25 years later, it's still one of the most beloved cartoons ever created. Every episode has at least one joke or line or some other third thing that'll stick with you for years to come. So it really wasn't ever a contest which era of SpongeBob would be taking home the gold. Or yellow.